I applied to all the dental schools in Canada and nothing. Education is vital, but I think that the way the school system is set up right now needs to change. You'll do an experiment one day, you'll follow the whole protocol, it will work perfectly. The next day, you'll literally do every single thing and it won't work. And you'll spend a month troubleshooting. I came across a YouTube video that was just kind of exposing women in Ghana that were struggling through school because they were the minority in STEM. That really spoke to me, and I was like, no, like this is injustice. The ideas that God gives you, sometimes he just plants a seed in you, but he wants you to take a step of faith and go after it.
Welcome back to the Many Roads podcast. I'm your host, Oba Okusanya. And with me today, I'm excited to have with me someone who I've known for a couple of years, over 10 years actually. She's the founder of EFeMS, which is Empowering Female Minds in STEM. She's host of Lessons from a PhD podcast. So yes, she is a doctor. She has a PhD. And, you know, she's just smart aleck. She's a mom, you know, a musician. Please help me welcome Dr. Anna Olanrewaju to the Many Roads podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Oba, for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Honestly, it's like I feel like this one has been a long time coming because I feel like there's a perspective that you offer in the world that not too many people have. I wonder what the percentage of people that have PhDs in the world are.
So I don't know in the world, but I remember I looked up in Canada when I got my PhD because I was like, oh, did I enter like a new, niche?
Yeah.
Apparently it's 1%, I think 1.1% of Canadians have PhDs. And if
Wow.
you think about it, the people that are Black and have PhDs is probably even less.
That's
right?
true.
So,
That's true. So definitely like that's why I said you're like a unicorn, I guess, at this point. But anyways, Anna, let's get into all of that and your story and all of that. But I think the question that is probably on everyone's mind is like, okay, I'll be honest with you, Anna. A lot of people right now are running away from school, and it doesn't seem like school is the thing everyone wants to go do. Yeah. So it's like, while people are running away from school, what made you think, you know what, I'm gonna go do a PhD?
Yeah. So I was always the odd one, like you said. A lot of people were running away from school. And so when people thought that I found out that I was in school for like a long period of time or doing my master's PhD, they're always like, but why? Like that would be the response. Okay, but why? And so for me personally, it's not like I ever sought out to do a PhD. It's not like I was little and I was like, oh, I want to do a PhD when I'm older. It just kind of happened for me. And I think that my path, like God strategically just kind of put my path in that direction. Because if it was up to me, I remember always saying like I would never do a PhD. When people would offer like suggest it, I would shut it down and be like, no, that's not me. I'm not doing a PhD. But I guess maybe getting into my story of how I ended up there. Starting off in university, I didn't really know what I wanted to do specifically. I always just kind of generally, like I was always good at school. I was decent at school, got decent grades, but I was never really like, oh, I want to be this when I grow up. A lot of people like want to be a doctor when they grow up, or they want to be an engineer or a lawyer or whatever. But for me, I just didn't really have that one goal. So I kind of moved through school following my interest, which was science. And I realized that, I was strong in science, specifically chemistry, and that's what I pursued. So in my undergrad, I did medicinal chemistry under like biopharmaceutical science. And then so I did that. I realized I was actually really good at chemistry, specifically organic. And I know everyone hates organic chemistry, but I loved it. And then I realized that, I really also liked healthcare as well, but I knew I did not want to be a medical doctor. Like that's one thing I knew for sure.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be a medical doctor. And I think because of like the hours that they put in, like they just work too hard. And although like I am a hard worker, I just didn't want my whole life to revolve around work, And so I was thinking, what else can I do in the healthcare field? And that's when I was like, okay, what about a dentist? Because at least a dentist, you're still helping patients in the healthcare field. but you have set hours, like they work 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, not really,
Mhm.
and they're not on call like that. So I prepared myself during my undergrad to go into dental school by getting good grades, doing the prerequisite test, which is the DAT, and I did decent on on all fronts. I applied to dental school and just nothing at all. Like I
Oof.
applied to all the dental schools in Canada and nothing. So I graduated my undergrad. I didn't have a plan B, and I remember sitting there like, okay, what am I going to do with my life with a
Mhm.
bachelor in science? Like I didn't know any job that would, interest me or that I could use my bachelor in science to. So I was talking to a family member or a family friend, and they were like, well, you could still go to dental school, but why don't you just do a master's to prepare yourself and to better your grades and better your chances? So I was like, okay, that makes sense. And I do like chemistry. So let me just do a master's in chemistry.
Wow.
And so I did a master's in chemistry. That all went well. Again, I think my last year of my master's, I applied to dental school again. I did
Yeah.
phenomenal this time on the DAT. I applied everywhere, nothing at all. I was like, wow, this is hard. Like, I didn't really think it was that hard to get into dental school. And so after that, I was like, okay, I mean, and I told myself that would be my last time applying,
Mm. Wow.
And after that, I was like, okay, well, I guess this path isn't for me because I prepared myself and I know like I was competitive enough, but the door was closed. So I
Mm.
just assumed that maybe that wasn't the right path for me. So after my master's, I moved back home and I did just like random jobs. I worked at Starbucks, I taught piano, I tutored for a good year. And then I went to my old campus, my undergrad campus, was talking
Mhm.
to a professor that I knew. And he was like, well, since you're not doing anything, why don't you just do a PhD in my lab? Like we have a spot, the spot is yours.
Yeah.
And I don't think I really understood what it took to do a PhD because I feel like if I did, I would have just said no, like not at all. But I think I was in a point where I actually had nothing, like I had no plans. I didn't know
Mm.
what I wanted to do. And so
Yeah.
when that door opened, I was like, okay, well, I mean, more education, why not? I'm sure I could get a good job with a PhD. So why not? Let me just do another 5 years of school?
Mhm.
And it was during my PhD when I realized that like, wow, this is kind of hard. This is a lot. And yeah, that's kind of how I ended up.
Wow. How long did it take to complete the PhD?
5 years. Took me five
Wow.
years. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I know you are like the pride and joy of every African parent right now.
Right?
Because I get this is what African parents want. And if you're listening or watching this and you know like the typical Nigerian Ghanaian parent, they're like, yes, this is what we're talking about.
I know. And but it's funny because my parents, they always encouraged us, like my sister and I, to do well in school, but they never
Yeah.
really were like, oh, you have to be a doctor, you have to do
Mm,
PhD. They just kind of supported us. So
no. That's incredible. But I guess I wanted to kind of piggyback off of something that you said. Applying to dental school 2 rounds in a row. Like first round you don't get in, then you go do the masters.
mhm.
Second round you don't get in. That must have been difficult to deal with. Could you talk about how like you handle that period? Because anyone could have just been like, you know what, I'm done with school. I'm done with everything.
Mhm. Yeah, so it was very difficult, especially when I really thought I was gonna get in, and
Mm.
I had my mind set on it, like and when you can see your future? Like, at that point, I
Oof.
remember seeing my future of working as a dentist, having my own dental firm or,
Yeah.
whatever, and that would be my life, and so I was so, like, set on it, so when it didn't come, um, I was definitely in a spot where it just kind of hit me like, "Whoa," like, I actually have no plan B, like, what am I going
Mm.
to do? Um, but then I'm the kind of person that I don't dwell on things.
Mm.
So I think at that point, I maybe took a day or maybe even a week, but then I have re-strategized and I was like, and I pivoted and I was like, okay, well, what else can I do with my skills? Because
Mm.
I mean, I wanted to make something out of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think I just quickly pivoted and was like, "Okay, what else? Like, what else can I do? What else am I interested in?" And then that's kind of how I took the path to doing something else.
No, and that's incredible. I think there's some value here that we can offer people in terms of how to pivot, because it's one thing to know, okay, this is not working, and then it's another thing to try to figure out, okay, what direction do I go? Like,
Mhm,
how did you kind of figure that out? Was it? I know you've kind of alluded to yours in the sense that it was a family member and talking to people, but
mhm.
at least the first go around. But for someone who's listening to this or watching, how would you, if they're like in between a rock and a hard place, they're trying to figure out where next to go, what next to do, how would you sort of tell them to do that?
Yeah, like, in hindsight, when I look back, I realized that even though I didn't know where to go, I knew what I was interested in, and I think that
Mm,
really helped me a lot. And so for anyone who's kind of in that spot, and I think it's so tough, being in undergrad or being 18 and going to university and trying to figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life. Like that is such a huge responsibility to carry. And
yeah.
I know myself, like I said, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I think that's completely fine if you're in that position. But I would just say that, know what you're interested in. And I find it really helpful to follow your interest in whatever you do.
Mm,
So whether it's, applying to different jobs, if there's something that you're interested in that job, then apply to it because you're interested in it. Or even just picking a university course as well,
mhm,
So for me, like I said, I knew that I was interested in chemistry. And so that's kind of the route I went to. And it's funny because what I'm doing now isn't directly related to chemistry, but it was chemistry that brought me to where I am now. And I love
mm.
my career. So
Yeah.
so that's one thing that I just always tell people that there's so many careers out there and there's so many jobs and job titles that we don't even know about
Mm,
unless you're in that field. But if you just keep on following your interests, you'll find yourself in a job or in a position or in a career that you love because that's what you're interested in.
yeah. No, I think this is a good place to segue into kind of what you're doing right now, because I saw your face light up when you talked about it. So I can tell you're really excited by it. So I mean the typical, correct me if I'm wrong, Anna, the typical like PhD path is you like do the master's, do the PhD, you become an academic. Like that's it. You publish papers and journal articles, all that stuff.
Mhm,
Uh I don't know if you maybe do some research as well. You like, but that's typically it. But
mhm.
you did you like try both, or like how, like can you walk us through that part of your journey?
Yes. So I definitely tried both. After my PhD, I actually wanted to go on the academia pathway. So, like you
Mm,
said, you write journal articles, you publish papers, you do research, and you become a professor at a university with your research group. So, that's
yeah.
kind of what I thought I wanted to do because that's the general path to take. And so, after my PhD, I went and did a postdoc because in order to get to that position, you have to
Hmm.
do more training.
Wow.
And so I know, right? After 5 years, you still have to do more training. But that's the way it's set up. And so I did a postdoc, and during my postdoc, I realized that it just wasn't for me. Like the whole
Mm,
academic culture, publishing papers, research, like I love reading about, different new innovative things that are happening in the science world and research papers. I just don't like doing the research. Which
fair
is
enough.
yeah, because I did the research on my PhD, but I think I was just like, "I'm done with this," right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, and so I tried that path and I was like, "You know what? It's not for me." But it was interesting because during my postdoc, I was in a lab that was also very industry focused. So they did a
Okay.
lot of commercialization of the different, research points in their lab. So say if they came up with a molecule or something, they would
Yeah.
try to commercialize it and produce it into a startup. And so that's kind of how I merged into pharmaceuticals and kind of got acquainted to the pharmaceutical world. And I realized that I really like this. Like, this is very interesting. And it's also healthcare focused as
Mm,
well because pharmaceutical industry, they make drugs in order to solve health problems.
mm.
And so I spoke to a few people, met a few people in that field, realized that like, wow, I really like this. I'm very, very interested in it. And I just kind of merged into that field and I love what I'm doing right now.
No, that's exciting. So like in terms of being in the pharmaceutical space, like you said, you're not doing research, but are you like what exactly are you doing?
Right. So I'm currently promoting a drug
Okay.
for a specific company to solve a healthcare problem. So my therapeutic area is COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. No, it's great because I guess if you were just an academic, you would just be teaching and all. But like you have such like a strong personality, and like you're able to connect with people. And I guess by doing this, you kind of are able to kind of merge your competencies.
Yes. Yes,
That
exactly. And that's exactly why I like what I'm doing because it's, science focused, but I'm also a people person. Like I love interacting with people and I get to do that on a day-to-day basis, right? Like
mhm.
interact with healthcare professionals, have scientific conversations. So like you said, I'm merging both of my interest, into one.
Yeah,
So yeah, it just worked
yeah.
out really, really well.
No. Hey there. I had to interrupt the podcast episode to tell you about the Clarity 7 communication guide. This guide is for you if you've ever struggled with your communication, if you've struggled with passing a message across, being clear and concise in your communication, or if you just struggle with confidence in communicating, this guide is for you. I'm not an expert, I'm not a communication guru. I'm just a guy who's found some steps that worked and just wants to share that with his community. So if you need some help with your communication, this guide is for you. It's free. Get it in the description below. It's in the description of the podcast. Wherever you're watching or listening, get it and improve your communication today. Rooting for you always. Let's get back to the pod. That's awesome, Anna. That's awesome. Okay, so let's switch gears here a little bit. Because this conversation, I've kind of framed it in my mind in the sense of like we walked through your personal journey, which we've just kind of done. But I also wanted to look broadly about at education, especially in North America today.
Mhm.
There's a lot of rhetoric on the internet that, like, look at the most, famous people in the world, look at the richest people in the world, they're dropping out of college, and, like, you don't need school. And,
Mhm.
people are confused. Like,
Yeah.
so I said, okay, I'm going to ask Anna, who is a PhD holder, who's a doctor, like, is education still the path in 2025?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's funny, these are the thoughts that go in my head as well. And sometimes I even think back and I'm like, was my PhD a waste? Because, like you
Mm,
said, there are so many people that are dropping out of college and super successful,
mm,
right? Or maybe just do an undergrad and still super successful. And so I would say in 2025, right now, well, first off, let's start back before 2025. I think that, when we were growing up, maybe in the 90s, education, and I say education as in going to school, going
yeah.
to university, getting a degree, and then doing a profession for the rest of your life. I
Hmm.
think that was kind of the framework of our parents, let's say, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you look at our parents, they all had professions. So they were either an accountant, they were either
Mm,
a doctor, they were a lawyer, they were a salesperson. Like, they just stayed in that profession for 20 years, 30 years, and then they retired.
mm,
That was the mindset of our parents. But I think that now we're in a new generation where no one's really tied to a profession anymore.
mm.
I see a lot of people going into different jobs and then maybe pivoting into something else. For example, my when I was at Dalhousie, I remember I spoke to the university president at one point, and I was just asking him questions about like his career because I always wondered like how do you make it to
Become,
be a
yeah.
like what's the yeah, I was just asking him a lot of questions and he was someone that he actually started off
Wow.
in engineering and then went into consulting and then dabbled in just little things here and there. But then all of his experience kind of tied up to him becoming a university professor because I guess he learned different skills here and there,
Mm,
made the right connections, network to become a university, no, sorry, not professor, but president,
yeah.
right? And so that made me realize that, these days, you don't really have to be tied to one job. And so going back to the education question, I feel like right now education is vital. But I think that the way the school system is set up right now needs to change.
Okay.
I think that the school system isn't keeping up with our times and is not preparing people for, how the world is going to be in 2030 or 2050.
Mhm.
And it's quite concerning because now that I'm a parent, I'm looking into, how can I set up my child best for this world or the world that she's going to live in when she's older? You know,
Mm.
how can I set her up to be successful and to know what's going on in the world? And then I look at the school system and I'm like, okay, but they're still teaching what I learned in the 90s.
Yeah.
Oh, and so it's kind of like, okay, why isn't it adding up? You know, like they're still teaching the same trigonometry, they're
Mm.
still teaching like the same just ecology, like just the same things.
Yeah.
Um, and so, you know, um, when it comes to the education system, I think that it's good because it does give our children discipline and teach them how to learn and teach them different skills. But I also think that there's other ways of educating yourself to prepare yourself for the world that, you know, we're heading into. So
Mhm.
whether it be through just talking to people, or a lot of people learn from YouTube as well, like YouTube University, that's what
Yeah.
or now that social media is huge, you know, learning from social media as well. But I find that like with social media, you also have to be a critical thinker because there's a lot of misinformation on there, but that's
Yeah.
a different topic for another day.
No, and it's crazy you say this because um there's also like there's people who are like, yeah, like the school system is not what it should be, and we most of us agree.
Mhm,
But then there's also people who are like, um the school system is not what it should be, and we're gonna go start our own thing. And
mhm,
what they have going on, and I'm like, this is not up to par. This is not. There's no structure to it.
yeah,
There's no, like, it's not tried and tested. And I understand that when we're being innovative, it'll take some time to kind of try and test these things.
yeah.
But I guess this brings me to my question: what are some of the things that you think need to be changed in the education system today? Like,
Mhm,
and I don't know what level you want to attack it at. Maybe at the university college level. Like,
mhm.
what are some of the things, or even at elementary high school level, whatever comes to mind. What do you think?
Yeah, so I would say so the one thing that I liked and I valued about graduate school, master's and PhD, is that they allowed you to create and they allowed you to think and to
Okay.
critically think. I think at the university level and even university pushing back to elementary school, all they teach you to do is memorize and then regurgitate what you memorize. And I realized that when I got into graduate school because I was like, what did I actually learn in university? I learned how to take tests.
Mm,
And I feel bad because there's a lot of people that are struggling in university and struggling in school, and there's people that don't think that they're intelligent because they're getting poor grades. But I always say I don't think it's because they're not intelligent. Maybe they just don't know how to take tests because that's all they're doing it in university, right? Or
yeah.
in school is just making you take tests and evaluating your learning on
Mhm.
tests. And I don't think that's the right way to evaluate someone's intelligence. Um, and so I think that if, you know, they incorporated more courses where kids can create, can critically think, can actually use their brain cells to create something and to produce something, I think that would really help as well because I know that it expanded my knowledge in my master's and my PhD because I got to do that. In a master's and PhD, you get to add to a field that you're in. So the fact that I was in chemistry, I was doing research to try to publish papers and to add to the field and to discover new things.
Mm.
Right. And so I think that really stretched me a lot and stretched my intelligence a lot and my knowledge a lot. And so if they were able to kind of incorporate that, maybe not to the extent of a master's or a PhD, but
Yeah,
incorporate those skills at the elementary level or high school or bachelor level, I think that would really help as well and prepare our children to, you know, to integrate into the world because they're now thinkers and they're not just test takers.
exactly. And the thing is, as you're talking, I'm thinking about the fact that sometimes on the arts side of school, I feel like they're thought to be more expressive and like
Mhm.
more like imaginative, and I get it because it's arts. But like if you're in on like in the sciences, it's almost like it's very like, like this is the way and this is how it's done and this is the formula,
Yeah.
and that kind of thinking doesn't, like, in the long run, it doesn't do a lot of help sometimes.
Oh,
Sometimes my wife, like Cynthia, likes to tease me. She's like, you're so logical because you're an engineer, like everything has to be like this, like this, like this.
yeah.
because I'm like, yeah, because all I know is like formulas and like logic and like a consistent flow of things. But
Hmm.
when it comes to like, for instance, when it comes to hosting a podcast, you can't be rigid like that.
Yeah.
When it comes to doing business with people, you can't be like, hey, if you don't do this, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when it comes to life, you can't, but we can go into all aspects of how the sciences are kind of a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit kind of jacked up, but it's okay. but but and I want to ask you a question around like the female representation in the space of like academia and PhDs and all that stuff. You kind
Okay.
of alluded to it at the beginning of the podcast. Like, how was that experience for you?
Hmm. So that was really tough for me, especially going into my PhD, because, and I think I said before how I didn't know anyone that was doing a PhD, so I didn't know what I was getting myself into.
Mm,
And I also did think that a PhD wasn't a goal of mine because I didn't know anyone that looked like me that had a PhD, right?
mm,
And so going into grad school, I think just in general, my master's, I was the only Black woman in my whole department.
wow.
My PhD, I was the only Black woman up until my last year, where I met another girl, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not the only one anymore." So yeah, like it was very tough because I think that I didn't like I feel like I didn't really relate to a lot of people in my field,
Mm,
right? And relate on a personal level and even just like our background experiences, like there's always that disconnect. And so I was struggling silently. And I remember my first few years of my PhD were so rough, my first 2 years, because I had the weight of trying to get results and
mm,
my projects weren't working out. I had the weight of balancing TAing, my research projects, mentoring, all these things that they pile on you for your PhD. And I feel like I just had no one to talk to. Like,
mm.
yes, I could talk to my friends, but they couldn't really relate,
Yeah.
and I just feel like I felt like I couldn't relate to the other people in my lab as well. And so that's actually when I went out and I started searching on social media and started searching, okay, who else is doing a PhD that looks like me? Because I know I cannot be the only one in the world. Like, there's other people out there. So I did a search on Instagram and I saw there was a lot of other Black women in the US and also Canada that looked like me and that were doing a STEM PhD. And through connecting with them and even just seeing their post, and that even encouraged me to start posting, science stuff on my
Mm,
Instagram when I was doing my PhD, just to also kind of expose what it's like to do a PhD because I didn't see that, growing up. And so I don't
exactly.
know if you remember back then, but I would post like day in the life of a
Yeah.
PhD student and like
Yeah.
in science facts and stuff like that. And I saw other people doing it too. And so that really helped me. And even seeing like some of the things that they were going through. And I was like, oh, wow, like finally someone that I can relate with, whether it be microaggressions or,
Mhm.
going to a conference and you're the only Black person in the whole conference. Right.
Oof.
And so yeah, I think that once I found a community, things got a lot better, but before then, it was really tough. It was
Yeah.
definitely tough. Mhm.
I can imagine. So I'm gonna take a shot in the dark. Is
Okay.
this kind of what led to you starting EFeMS?
Yes.
Okay.
You're
Yeah, can
correct.
you talk about EFeMS?
Yeah, so EFeMS was started in the pandemic, actually.
Mm,
So in the pandemic, we weren't able to go to the lab, and because my research was all lab based, I was at home, like doing absolutely nothing.
wow.
And as a true academic, I was like, "Okay, what else can I do with my time?" Because I'm here doing nothing. And so I was just kind of thinking back on my experiences. And then I came across, I think it was a YouTube video. And it was a YouTube video that was just kind of exposing women in Ghana that were struggling through school because they were the minority in STEM. Right. And
Mm,
so there was a huge gender disparity in STEM where there's more men that go into STEM than women. And women were rather discouraged from going into STEM. And so that just, when you see a cause and it just really speaks to you.
yeah.
So yeah, that really spoke to me and I was like, no, like this is injustice. Like this can't, like I don't want the same thing to happen to me to be happening to everyone else.
Mm,
And so I was like, okay, what can I do to maybe help them feel more encouraged to go into STEM and pursue STEM careers. And so I was thinking back to what helped me. And the one thing that really helped me was gaining professional development skills and preparing myself for my career. Because one thing I find in academia is that you learn so many technical skills, but then when it comes to professional development skills like public speaking or
Hmm.
putting together presentations and all these things that you need in the corporate world or the career world, they don't really teach you that. You just have to kind of learn on your own. And so EFeMS actually started off as okay, I just want to do a boot camp that
Okay.
would teach African women professional development schools that would prepare them for the workforce in STEM. So it started off with that. And these were the days where I was on Twitter. And so I
Hmm.
remember putting out a tweet and I was like, I'm interested in doing this, like A, B, C, and D, wondering if anyone would also be interested to join. And that tweet got retweeted. A lot of people commented. I think like up to 1,000 people commented,
Wow.
or sorry, hundreds of people commented.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, wow, there's a lot of interest for this. Through that, I was able to meet a bunch of people that also wanted to support and partner with some people. And then it just kind of turned into a whole organization because of the interest and the need and everything.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it just turned into a nonprofit organization. And it's been 4 years now. And I can say that, something that was just kind of idea, I'm really like, it's really surprising to see how it's just propelled into kind of like a movement, and how a lot of people are interested. And it's also helped a lot of people too. Like we offer mentorship programs, like I said, the professional development boot camp that we do. And I think the one thing that brings me joy is the community that we
Yeah.
offer as well. Cause I know that that helped me so much just finding other people that look like me and had the similar interests.
Hmm.
And so that's what we try to do with EFEMS as well.
Yeah. And can you talk about how taking a step based off of like a little bit of a feeling and not knowing how it's gonna turn out. Can you talk about that process? Because
Yeah.
I would think there's times a lot of us have possibly seen something that you're like, I should probably do something about that, but you're just like, what can I do? You know what I mean? And in your case, you saw an issue and you're like, I think I can do something about this.
Mhm.
And something as little as a tweet sparked a movement that has become a whole like organization. And you guys are doing like programs and all these things now. Could you
Mhm.
talk about how important it is and that process as well?
Mhm. Yeah, so I find that with me, and you can probably tell this from my story, is I throw myself into things,
Yeah.
which can be good and bad at the same. So, like, my PhD, I threw myself into it, and then I realized, like, "Oh, this is a lot." And I did the same thing with the nonprofit too. I threw myself at it, and, like, it has been a lot, but it's also been fulfilling at the same
Yeah.
time, which is why I've kept with it. But, I think that it's really valuable to not overthink things and just to, go off of instinct and feeling
Yeah.
sometimes, because you never know, like, the ideas that, God gives you, and I truly believe that God gives us all the ideas that we have.
Yeah.
And so the ideas that God gives you, sometimes He just plants a seed in you, but He wants you to take a step of faith and go after it. And
Mhm.
I remember at that point, I didn't have a blueprint. I had no idea how to start a nonprofit. I didn't know anyone in the nonprofit space. I didn't even really know what a nonprofit was. But
Yeah.
I started it, and then I realized that I just kind of learned as I went along, and this whole nonprofit journey has been a learning experience. 4 years later, I'm still learning new things and still implementing new things that I'm learning as well. And so I think that, sometimes you don't have to have a blueprint. You don't have to have all the answers to
Yeah.
do something. It just kind of takes you stepping into it, and then you'll see that everything will fall into place. Sometimes people will come to help you out. Sometimes you'll meet people that are doing similar things that can also help you as well. And that's what I've seen with my nonprofit journey.
No, it's as you're talking, I'm also thinking about the fact that like, if you didn't take the step, the time will have still gone by anyways.
Mhm.
And I don't think those people will have gotten maybe they would have gotten help from somebody else, but it wouldn't have been the kind of help you would have offered
Mhm.
And like that whole idea might not have existed through your expression. Maybe somebody else would have ended up doing something like that, but it would be missing in the world. But
Yeah.
one thing I love about your story is the fact that, like, yes, you say you're just putting yourself out there and doing it, but it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of like confidence and courage to be like, you know what, I'm gonna do something about that, or I'm gonna try this. And even though you don't know if it's gonna work or not, it's just like, I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah.
Can you talk? Can you talk about that? Because there's probably someone listening or watching who's like, you sound very courageous, and I could never.
Funny. I don't paint myself as a courageous person. Like, if you know me, I'm just very to myself, you know? Like, I'm just very to myself. I mind my business. I just go about my life. But um, yeah, I don't know. I just think that when I'm really like when I set my mind on something, like I just have to do it. Right? And I'm not the person that's super passionate about a lot of things. There's a few things I'm passionate about, but I think that like I said, I think it just takes that one step of like acting, and then you'll see that everything comes into place.
Yeah.
And yes, it does take a lot of courage, but I also think it takes faith as well, and
Mm,
just having faith in the idea that God gave you and your vision. And even if you talk to a lot of people that have are in the startup world or in the business world and have created things, a lot of people will say that, yeah, to this day I have no idea what I'm doing. Even
yeah.
like in my line of work, when you talk to like the top executives or the people that are all the way up there, they're like, yeah, I'm still just figuring out day by day. And I think that that's the mindset of everyone. Like, no one has it all together. No one knows what
Exactly.
they're doing
Yeah.
with life. You're just figuring it out. And so I think that if you have that mindset that everyone's just figuring out, so let me just also just figure it out too. Yeah, it helps.
I can imagine, especially when it's like, I mean, you're doing this at the higher level too, where it's like, I'm figuring out a PhD. For some of us, we're just like, I want to just figure out how to just like run this podcast. I'm kidding though, but it's very encouraging to see the fact that, like, you've just said to yourself, you know what, I'm just gonna try it, and if it works, it works. You
Hmm.
know. Now, I guess, but on the flip side of that is trying things that didn't work out,
Hmm.
and you know, it's very easy to sometimes let the failures that we experience occasionally in our lives kind of define like our decisions in the future.
Hmm.
And we've kind of touched on this a little bit when it came to like the whole dental school and whatever. But have there been other times, especially in your PhD journey, where you're just like, maybe I should just stop this now, like maybe.
Like every week. Honestly, like PhD is a lot. It's a lot. And when you're doing research, like things just don't work out. You'll do
Mhm.
something one day, and I mean, let me just speak from like chemistry research, okay?
Yeah.
You'll do an experiment one day, you'll follow the whole protocol, it'll work perfectly. The next day, you'll literally do every single thing and it won't work. And
Wow.
you'll spend a month troubleshooting, "Okay, why isn't it working?" Like, there's been so many situations like that, but I think that because I went through, like, failure after failure
Mm.
after failure in my PhD, it really built up resilience in me, and just to keep on pushing because, I think at the back of my mind when I was doing my PhD and things weren't working out, I was like, "Okay, I have no other plan." And I don't think I could imagine coming home to my parents and being like, "Yeah, oh, this thing, I think I'm gonna drop out." And so I think that that's also what kept me going is the fact that I had no plan B and I just didn't wanna quit. And so I also saw myself at the finish line.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that helped too, like, seeing myself graduate and just reminding myself that, like, I will graduate no matter what, no matter how many years it takes me,
Mm.
I will graduate. So yeah, I think that PhD really built resilience of just, whether things don't work out or things fail, just learning how to pivot and just move on to something else.
Yeah. No.
Mhm.
No, Anna, the question on my mind at this point is, So you finished the PhD, now you're kind of working in this new field that's exciting. And could you have pictured still getting here without the PhD?
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
definitely. Yeah. So and that's why, the whole question is education is it valuable? But so one thing that I realized, and let me just talk about my industry specifically. I don't know
Mm,
anything about anyone else's industry, but let me talk about the pharmaceutical industry. So, the one thing that annoyed me when applying for jobs was the fact where they were looking for experience.
mm,
And I always say, like you have a job and you're saying it requires experience, but then how do you actually get that experience if all of your jobs require experience? Like, how do you get your foot in the door? And,
yeah.
even during my interviews, no one really cared that I did a PhD or what my research was on.
Wow.
And it's funny because, like, in academia, everyone is so focused on your research and publishing papers and what are you doing with, like, what are your new ideas? But then you go into, like, the industry world and no one really cares about your
Mm,
research. They just care about, okay, what's your previous experience? Like, do you have experience doing this role? Um, and so that being said, I think that experience gets you in the door a lot of
o-
times,
okay.
but then education helps you to reach a higher level once you're in the door.
Mm,
So I know that now that I'm in my industry, because I have a PhD, the sky is the limit in terms
mm,
of what kind of roles I want, right? But I know that for some roles, it depends on your education level. So some roles you can only do with a PhD, some roles you can only do with a master's. And so in that case, I find that, doing higher education is useful. But I will say that I do work with a lot of people that don't have a PhD as well, but they
yeah.
have tons of experience.
Mm,
So I'm still trying to figure out, okay, which one weighs more when it comes to the corporate world or when it comes to jobs? Is it experience or is it education? I don't have the answer to that right now. I'm still trying to figure it out.
no, and it's incredible that you brought that up because I think this is something that probably cuts across every industry. Like
Mhm.
even as an engineer coming out of school, it was like, yeah, you need to have 3 to 5 years experience for an entry level job. And I'm like, my dude, for the last 3 to 5 years, I've been in school.
Yeah.
Like, where was I supposed to be getting the experience at the same time while being in school?
Mhm.
And so, see, so a lot of times when we talk to younger people who are like just like coming out of university, and a lot, I don't want to say a lot of people have bought into the lie that like it's a very straightforward, clear cut path
Yeah.
from university or college into working. Except you're
Mhm.
like in a very like specific niche profession or trade, where it's
Mhm.
like you go be an electrician, you go to school of electricians, I don't know what it's called, and then you go be an electrician, you go apprentice with somebody. But
Mhm.
for like someone who's just supposed to find a job after, like it's not usually like very clear cut. Could you I guess give some advice in terms of how you might be able to get some experience while you're in school, or at least try to maybe put projects together to at least form some sort of experience, something like that.
Mhm. Yeah. So I would say that, in school, you can always do co-op. I mean, I
Yeah.
did a co-op program, and through that, you can co-op at different industries and get experience through there. I know a lot of industries also have internships as
Mm,
well. You can volunteer, like if you want to pursue research, you can volunteer in a lab, that kind of stuff. Um, but I will say that what helped me, like besides my PhD and I guess besides, you know, um, the non-experience that I had, what really helped get my foot in the door was networking.
mm,
And so that's something that I really stand by because I find that these days, like you said, getting a job isn't straightforward
mm.
anymore. No matter how much education you have, no matter how good your grades are, it's not like you finish university and you just get a job. It's so competitive out there these days, right?
Yeah.
And even if you have experience, it's still super competitive because you're not the only one that has experience as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's when networking comes in and, connecting with people that are at the job that you want or people that have similar positions. And so that's kind of the approach that I took when I was looking for jobs is yes, I would apply and yes, I, would try to um apply to the roles that I thought I was most qualified for. But then at the same time, I also connected with people in that industry and at that company as well. And so that's I would definitely give that advice of, use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is your best friend
Yeah.
comes to applying for jobs, and cold call people, cold
Mm,
message people. I always say, there will be a ton of no's. People will ignore you, but all you need is that one yes, and all you need is that one person that will actually help you, you know.
yeah.
Yeah, and so
It's incredible that you say this because there was another guest on the podcast a couple of weeks months ago now, I would say. And one thing she had also said was like she would like cold email, cold DM people and be like, "Hey, I need this," like, and she's like, worst case is like it's a no,
mhm,
but then there's a lot of people who are maybe I would say shy,
mhm,
and Anna, like, I know you're not really an extrovert,
no.
so I know it's not easy for you to get to a place where you're just like messaging strangers, right? So could you walk us through like how you had to, it's not change, but how you had to like almost get yourself to that place where you're comfortable doing that and doing that consistently?
Mhm. Yeah, you're right, I'm not an extrovert at all. I'm a true introvert. I am, but, um I mean, how bad do you want it? That's all
Mm,
I'll say. Like, you can sit there and not cold call people and still, just apply with a resume, and you may not hear anything, but, um, I would just say that sometimes you just need to suck up your pride and
mm,
cold message people, and I think it's nice because you don't have to literally walk up to someone. I think that's more
yeah.
frightening, is walking up to someone and being like, "Hi,
Hi.
my name is Anna, and I'm just interested in your like, that's nerve-wracking,
Yeah.
But I think just sending a quick message to someone on LinkedIn, it takes 2 seconds
Mm,
to do that, and, if they don't reply, that's fine, you probably won't interact with them again, or you'll never see them again.
mm,
But there will be a lot of people that wanna help you out, and that's what I found too, that there actually are a lot of people that wanna give back and wanna help, and those are the people that will email you back and that will set up a Zoom call with you to help you with your resume, to talk things through. And some people may even give you a referral as well. And those
yeah.
referrals come in handy when it comes to getting a job. So yeah.
I can imagine, especially in a time where there's so much competition,
Mhm.
like, like because of all the layoffs and stuff that's happening, you look at a job and like over 1,000 people have applied. And
Yeah,
it's like you need to take every step possible to kind of get closer to the interview stage.
exactly.
And if if a referral is the step that you need, that is the thing you need, like you have to find a way to secure it.
Mhm. Yep,
No. N-
definitely.
Now, Anna, this is on the education side of things, on the career side of things. I'm interested because as you're talking, I'm like, your academic journey sounds very entrepreneurial in the sense that, like, okay, this failed, I'm going to do this. This didn't work, I'm going to start this. Okay, I
Mhm.
see this problem, I'm going to fix it. So I wonder, like, is there any parallels that you can, that anyone can draw between that journey and like entrepreneurship in your life personally? Like, are you doing anything entrepreneurial?
Um, I mean, other than my nonprofit,
Yeah.
no, but it's funny, it's always been something I've been very, very interested in,
Yeah.
and I find myself in circles with entrepreneurs as
Yeah.
well, which is very interesting. So like I said, during my postdoc, it was a lab that was really big on startups and
Mm,
commercializing things, right? And so, I found myself with people that had that entrepreneurial mindset. My
yeah.
supervisor was a serial entrepreneur, right? And I find myself listening to entrepreneurship podcasts as well. So I don't know, maybe in the future you may see,
Yeah.
something. But right now I would say it's just my nonprofit, but I'm very interested in the startup world. Like, I find it so fascinating of
Yeah.
just like, starting something and building a business, and yeah.
Yeah, no, and the reason why I bring that up is because there's also been a lot of movement in the like healthcare, like health med is it med health space in terms
Yeah.
of like technology and now with AI and all these things. And it seems
Yeah.
like there's a lot of movement in that direction. And I
Hmm.
mean, now we're even talking about people like wanting to live longer and hack their, their genes and all these other things, right? So like
Yeah.
that's why I asked, because I'm like, I feel like maybe in the very near future you're gonna have an idea that's gonna be like, hey, I'm gonna help human beings live to
I mean,
100.
I receive it. I mean, we'll see.
But please, whenever you're starting, please, I want to be an investor, please. I'd like to get in on the ground floor, you know.
Of course, yeah, you're the first one that called it, so don't worry, we'll get back.
Oh, now Anna, that's all on the professional side of things. Of course,
Mhm.
a little bit, I guess, a little bit under a year ago, you became a mom. You
Yeah.
know, I, I how has that been compared to having a PhD?
Yo, I think we were just talking about this before. I was like, my life is just like, I feel like I'm always on the go. Yeah, motherhood is a lot.
Mm,
It's a lot, and I think it's so interesting because, my PhD was hard, but it
mm,
was hard, but I still had control at least.
mm.
Like I still had control of my time. If I wanted to take a break and sleep, I could do that. If I wanted
Yeah,
to step away and hang out with my friends, I could do that. If I wanted to just, like spend all day at the lab or just I could do whatever I wanted to do. My time was still my time at the end of the
yeah.
day. Being a mom, my time is not my time anymore. Like I just don't have time for myself, So it's challenging in that sense where,
Mm,
you're taking care of someone or like of your daughter or of your son and
yeah.
they take all of your time and
Mm,
it's also really fulfilling as well because even just seeing them grow, like she's almost a year now. My daughter's name
mm,
is Vera. She's
yeah.
almost a year. And sometimes I look back at her pictures when she was like a month, 2 months, and how big she is now. Now she's starting to walk and just
Wow.
seeing like, just seeing how she's grown and how she's learning things is also just so beautiful,
Yeah.
but it is very challenging. And you're a dad, so I'm sure you can speak to it
Oh my
as
God.
well. Like raising a child is like no other job out there. Like I have nothing to compare it to. It's
No, you're absolutely right. My wife and I have an inside joke. We say like being a parent is like having two full-time jobs.
oh yeah, it really is. Yeah. And I mean like I'm going back to work. I'm almost on my mat leave. I'm going back to work
Yeah.
next week and I'm stressed. I'm already stressed because I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna handle both. I don't know how parents do it out there.
Yeah.
Working and taking care of a child is crazy.
Uh,
It's
I
insane.
I can imagine. And the reason why I bring that up is because going through all that you've gone through in terms of your professional journey, and now you have a child, putting that into context, like if Vera was to come meet you now and be like, okay, mom, I think I want to go do a PhD. I think I'm going to go the route you went.
Mhm.
And knowing how much the world has also changed, and knowing how much the job scene has changed, and knowing how much a lot of things have just changed, what
Mhm.
what would you say to Vera?
Yeah. So my husband and I, we always talk about this. And I think that, I'm in support of whatever my children want to do,
Hmm.
but just go at it 100%.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. So it's like if she wants to do a PhD, of course, go all the way because I think that PhDs are still very valuable.
Okay.
They're still very, very valuable. And PhDs they allow you to think in a different way as well. And I think that, although our world is changing, there's still room for PhD holders as
Hmm.
well. Like no matter the industry, there's still room for that. So if she wanted to do that, 100%. If she wanted to be a musician, go for it, but just go at it 100%. Because I
Exactly.
think that we're in a world right now where you can monetize anything. You can make a career out of anything
Yep.
right now. So I'm all for whatever my children want to do. I just think like have a plan and know how you're going to make money out of it, but just go at it full force. And I'm sure something will come out of it because our world is changing. And like I said, we don't really have, like, you don't have to stay in a profession for your whole
Hmm.
life like our
Yeah.
parents did. You don't have to choose a profession
Yeah.
like our parents did, right? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think that with our children are in a really interesting spot right now, and I think they're going to grow up into a very interesting world, um,
Definitely.
especially with just like technology and AI and how everything
Yeah.
is changing, right? And so I think that the possibility is endless for them Like there's so many things that they can do. So I'm curious what the new jobs are going to be, or the new careers
Exactly.
are going to be
Exactly.
like in their time, because I think
Yeah.
there's going to be a shift. There's going to be a change.
Yeah.
And so I think that, as parents, it's our responsibility to just kind of set them up for
Mhm.
whatever is going to happen in their time.
Yeah. Can you are there any changes you foresee to like the world of academia and like PhDs and masters? Are there any changes that you foresee that, okay, based off of how this is going, they might kind of pivot to this or kind of tweak this a little bit? Like, are there any sort of those changes that you've been thinking about as well?
Um, I honestly don't even know, but I always think about like just how rampant AI is right now, and how
Yeah.
all students are using AI for their assignments and for school
Yeah.
and everything. And so I always think like how how are teachers going to handle that? And I know that when AI first started coming out, there were those like AI captures. I can't remember what
Hmm.
they were called.
Yeah.
Teachers would use them to see if like they students would use AI for their assignments and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like, are they gonna be doing that for every single student? I don't know. So I'm really curious to see how schools are gonna change and education is gonna change. I'm really, really curious. I have no prediction. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be interesting.
No, for sure, it's going to be interesting. Like, because
Mhm.
I mean, even as you were talking, I was just even thinking about like research.
Yeah.
Like the things that we will have had to. Like, I did an MBA, and
Mm.
Lord have mercy, I went from a civil engineering undergrad to doing an MBA,
Yeah.
and like prior to going to like my MBA through that program, I had probably written only like 4 papers in all of university because I'm an engineer. We don't write papers.
Yeah.
Right. So and then I go to this MBA and just a ton of papers. And
Mhm.
that was where I got introduced to the world of research and like, your review like your researching peer reviewed papers and all these things.
Yeah.
And like you have a point you need to make, but you need to go find somebody who's kind of made a similar point and then
Mhm.
reference their work and all these things. I feel
Yeah.
like AI might be quite useful in terms of finding those kind of, oh, like I have this idea. Is there any other published journal that sort of talks about that? You
Yeah.
know,
Mhm.
but in terms of actually doing the like putting the paper together, I don't know if we're there yet.
Yeah, see, I don't know if we're there yet. But, so just kind of piggybacking off of what you were saying is, in research, I think that AI and machine learning is a strength. For
Okay.
sure, and I
Yeah.
think that it will really propel research, because in the lab that I was in, so I don't wanna get too technical, but
Yeah.
so we were looking into, identifying various, molecules that could potentially be drugs for different kind of cancers,
Hmm.
okay? And so back in the day, or I would even say before AI, what you had to do is a lot of times when you're looking at a specific, or if you're creating a molecule that could be a drug, molecules that will usually bind to proteins, and that's kind of how they act, or they'll bind to different biomolecules in your body. Okay,
Hmm.
just to keep it the simplest form. And so before, you would have to literally make the molecule, test it out with whatever biomolecule, so whether it be a protein or RNA or DNA,
Yeah.
test it out, and then do trial and error. Okay, if it worked, then fine. If it didn't work, go back to the drawing board, recreate, and then test it out again.
Wow.
But now with machine learning and AI, what's really valuable is that machine learning is doing that for you,
Hmm.
where they are, where it is pretty much, kind of picturing or testing out the molecule for you, so you don't have to physically do it yourself.
Wow.
So with that, it saves you a bunch of steps,
Yeah.
right? So I think that, with this new age that we're in, it's really going to propel research, and we're going to get answers faster. And I think it's going to solve a lot of problems a lot faster. So with that, I think that it's definitely a strength. But when it comes to, students and writing papers, I don't even know. I don't know how they're going to handle that.
Yeah, fair enough, man. Fair enough, I know. Now, I guess we're talking about AI, and there's also this, of course, ongoing conversations around AI's replacing jobs. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we saw Microsoft lay off like over 2,000 people. This is earlier this year,
Yeah.
because they said they were able to optimize some of their processes using AI, so they had to lay off those people. So essentially, we are seeing AI replace jobs,
Yes.
but it's crazy because when it comes to academia, I don't think it's possible.
Hmm.
like when it comes to like, and I'd love your take on it. Like, what do you think? Is AI gonna like replace our professors and like PhD? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think so. Like, I think there will always be a need for, professors and teachers. Um, for the fact of also human interaction. I think
Yeah,
that's useful, but I think that AI will make their job easier for sure, but
yeah,
I think that you will still need them, right? For chemists, for example, or researchers, I think that you will still need, the chemist and the researcher, but their job is just going to look different. Where
yeah,
AI will maybe simplify their job or, help them get results faster. So I think that their job descriptions is going to change, but I think that there will still be a use for it. And I think
yeah,
that, for most of the industries out there, that's kind of the shift that we're heading into where the job description is going to change, but you'll still see the personnel's there, but they will have to be trained in AI or machine learning or whatever because their job, a big portion of their job will have to do with that.
yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. We can only predict, right? But
Hey,
we'll see in like 10, 20 years. It's going to be
yeah.
interesting though. Very,
Yeah, it's gonna. You're right. It's gonna be absolutely interesting. But I think that's a fair assessment to make.
yeah.
Now Anna, this is last question before I let you go because I know we're kind of running late here. Um, I mean, you've done school more than the average person. I think you've probably done like 2 decades of school. If
Yeah.
we kind of like put everything together,
In school
um,
since I was 29,
wow, yeah.
like back to back.
So that being said, this question is tailor made for you.
Okay.
What's one, if you could think of one hard truth about success that nobody told you in school, but you had to like learn the hard way? Like, what's
Mhm,
one thing that, you know, that a hard truth about success that you're like, wow, I can't believe in all these years of school, nobody ever mentioned this to me.
mhm. Um, I would just say that, like, things don't come easy, you need to work for what you want, or you need to work to attain something, um, and things are gonna be difficult. So, the one thing that I realize and I stand by is that everything is always difficult until you learn.
Mm,
And when now that I'm raising a child, I see that all the day, all times of the day. Like I said, my daughter is just starting to walk,
mm,
right? And when she first started walking, like she was struggling and would
mm,
fall and then would take a few steps and then fall. And that's how it was. But now she's falling less. And you
mm.
realize that she's getting better at walking, right? And if you look at us now, we walk and we don't even think about it.
True.
And so and so I always say that everything is always difficult until you learn, but once you learn, things are gonna be easy. And I think that that has been the trend of my life where there has been difficult times going through school. People look at me and think that I'm super smart and things were very, very easy. And I always say that I honestly don't think I'm that smart. I just work hard.
Mm,
And that's what you'll find in life that, success, it takes hard work. Um, when you look at people that are very successful or at the top, you may think that, oh, they just got there because they're lucky or they didn't have to work. But I'm sure that if you ask them, they will talk to you about, the tireless nights that they
mm,
worked and how hard it was and, the obstacles that they faced. And so, yeah, I would definitely say that success, it just takes hard work and you just need to keep at it. And once you keep at something and you're resilient and, if something fails, you pivot. I think that is the framework for success is being able to work hard, being able to pivot, and just keeping at it.
mm. Like just not giving up, not letting up, just like
Not
don't
giving
quit.
Yeah, don't quit for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I hope there's a grad school student listening who's like on the edge of quitting right now and is like, whew, well, I'm encouraged, I'm not gonna quit.
Yeah, I hope so. Because honestly, like having a PhD, it's good to have. It
Mm,
really is good to have. Like besides the fact that, you have like this added knowledge and whatever, you're more competitive for various jobs and stuff, but you also just gain the respect
facts.
as well. You gain the respect of being a doctor. So
Yeah. I can imagine. I can imagine. No, Anna, this is I think that's a solid like takeaway is the fact that like regardless of whatever it is that you're working on, regardless of whatever. And it's beautiful because it cuts across every industry, across
Mhm.
every job, across every sphere of life, actually, not just even in jobs, like even in like just having a family. Like it takes hard work to
Yeah.
build anything that will be successful. And, you know, like people say there's no overnight successes, it kind of alluding to the fact that everyone's putting in this hard work. And if
Yeah.
you're seeing the results, is because there's work behind it, the results,
100%.
you
Yeah.
know. Yeah,
Mhm.
Anna, this has been an amazing episode. Thank you for coming on the Many Roads podcast. I don't know if you just wanted to kind of plug EFeMS in and the lessons from the PhD podcast as well.
Sure. Yeah. So EFeMS, you can follow us on Instagram and also LinkedIn at Empowering Fems. And we are also holding a boot camp this fall. So I don't know if anyone in Ghana or even Nigeria is listening to this podcast, but watch out for updates on that. It will be in November in Ghana in person. And Lessons from a PhD, that's my podcast as well, where I talk about and I interview actually various PhDs, and I also
Yeah.
talk about my experience and different things that I learned from my PhD. So you can find that on Instagram at Lessons from a PhD.
Nice. Awesome. And for those of us who do not have PhDs, Anna, are we allowed to listen to the podcast?
Of course. Yeah,
I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing.
everyone.
I'm just teasing. No, honestly, I have tremendous respect for anyone who like is able to get a PhD done. Because I took a master's and it wiped my butt. So I
It's
like, yeah, like hats off to you.
Thank you.
you know,
Thank you so much for having me on this podcast.
no, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. It was a great conversation. Well,
Yeah.
there you have it, everyone. Thanks for watching, listening to this episode of the podcast. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're a PhD student currently pursuing your PhD as well, I'd love to hear from you. How's it going? And please feel free to, of course, connect with Anna and reach out to Anna and get involved with all that she's doing. But yeah, also don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And all that fun stuff. Would love to hear from you. That being said, thank you so much for joining us on this one. Till next time, God bless.